Hey, hi, hello. That's my dog in the background. Sorry for all the dog barking. I'm trying to get it under control and I'm working on. No barking! No barking! I'm working on a separate room where I can take care of my day. Lulu, no barking. Okay? What we are going to be doing today is listening to um, disturbed cases. Okay, Lulu. Lulu. No problem. She was my best friend. She looked like a gift, like a big sunshine. Hello. Welcome to my talk show. Okay. There were times when we were feeling pretty much down that she may have been taken and killed. But we really couldn't let ourselves or allow ourselves to believe that. Every day when you don't know, you wake up and wonder, is she going to be coming home today?
On November 26, 2000, at exactly 3:36 p.m., a CCTV camera captured 15-year-old Sarah Whitehouse and her best friend, 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan, exiting a shopping center in Leeds. They were enjoying a day together as they did some early Christmas shopping. The girls caught a bus back to Bramley and parted ways. Shortly after, Sarah dialed Leanne's number, but she got no response. Eventually, Sarah called Leanne's mother, Sharon, and asked to speak to Leanne. Sharon told Sarah that Leanne wasn't home yet. She tried calling her daughter's number, but it kept ringing. Leanne never picked up. It was every mother's nightmare. Their child going missing. Where was Leanne? What had happened to her? Welcome back to M7 Crime Story Time, where we cover solved, unsolved, and twisted cases from around the world.
Leanne Thurman.
This case takes us across the pond to England. In West Leeds, West Yorkshire, is a little neighbourhood called Bramley. You can find it between Kirkstall and Stanley. The region is a formal industrial sector with a lot of 19th century buildings and 20th century homes, including one of the last surviving bathhouses from the Edwardian era. The northern part of the area is crossed by the River Aire, a beautiful backdrop that visitors to Bramley Fall Park enjoy. Central roads and rails connected the town to nearby Bradford, and it's only 4 miles from the city centre of Leeds. An ideal place to raise a family. Or so the locals believed. Leanne Tiernan was born on September 27, 1984, to Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead in Bramley. The couple soon divorced, but Leanne maintained a healthy relationship with her father. Leanne and her elder sister Michelle lived in Leeds with their mum, while their father remained a familiar presence in both their lives. Leanne also loved spending time with her grandma and granddad. No barking. She also loved chocolate so much that an uncle nicknamed her Chocolate Chip Niece.
Go lay down till dinner time. Come on, everybody, down till dinner.
Leanne was a pupil at West Leeds Hospital and had been very busy studying for her GCSEs.
Lulu,
15-year-old Sarah Whitehouse was out helping change homes.
No barking.
To go to Leeds for
no barking.
Sunday, November 26, 2000.
Okay, break you guys out of that habit.
After going to church with her grandmother, she
Don't come
returned
down.
home to get ready for her shopping trip with Sarah. Leanne wore a black and white ripped polo neck jumper, black trousers, and a pair of black ankle boots. Over that, she pulled on her blue jacket. She tied her hair up in her favorite style, a French twist, gave her a kiss, and set out to meet up with Sarah. The two boarded a bus to downtown Leeds. By late afternoon, they were done shopping and were on the bus headed back home to Bramley. At around 4:50 p.m. that afternoon, the two friends got off the bus and made a short walk to Sarah's home before going their separate ways. Sarah watched Leanne walk towards Howley Gill. It was an unlit path in an area of wasted woodland, a shortcut that her mom had told her to never go through at night. But there was ample daylight, so Leanne felt safe taking the public footpath. It should have been just a 20-minute walk to her home. But when Sarah called Leanne's home to talk to her at 5:20 p.m., Sarah was surprised to find out that Leanne had not gotten back yet. Sharon immediately rang Leanne's cell phone to find out where she'd gotten to, but there was no response. She continued to try the number over and over again. At first, the phone rang several times before being turned off.
It was actually Sarah wanting to speak to Leanne. She said she's not back yet. So I phoned her mobile and it rang on about 20 times.
That same night, the family went to the local church to get flashlights to search the area. Throughout the night, shouts for Leanne were heard in the early hours of the morning. But there was no reply, and no Leanne. West Yorkshire Police, headed by Detective Superintendent Chris Gregg, sprang into action searching for the teenager. It was not an easy terrain to search. There were more than 700 houses, open areas, woodland, canals, drainage shafts, and wells. Many places to hide a teenager. They had their work cut out for them, but they were determined to bring Leanne home safe and sound. Helicopters flew overhead as uniformed officers and search dogs plowed the streets, going from house to house. The waste collection was stopped in the area to preserve any potential evidence. A week later, there was still no sign of Leanne. Investigators reconstructed Leanne's last movements with the help of her 19-year-old sister Michelle and best friend Sarah. Michelle wore the same clothes that Leanne had worn and stoically walked the same route that her sister had been taking when she disappeared.
I think we were clutching at straws, but we were kind of hoping that she had run away and nothing bad had happened, even though it was our character for it.
When it aired on the news, several people came forward and told investigators that they'd seen a man walking his black and tan dog in the Howley Gill area just an hour before she got off a bus on her journey home. A composite sketch was made and released. The man was described as 5'8", of stocky build, and with a round face that may be scarred. He was seen wearing a black woolen hat, 3/4 length waterproof jacket, and dirty jeans. Police released the information to the public. The calls came in fast. Every man who owned a dog became a suspect. In the end, 70 men who had dogs were identified, but they would all be eventually eliminated as suspects. With not much else to go on in the investigation, the case slowly went cold, but the public continued to rally behind the family, doing all that they could to keep Leanne's story at the forefront. A father of 3 from Leeds, Sean Clark, heard about the story and offered a £10,000 reward for information leading to the safe return of missing teenager Leanne Tiernan. Iceland Foods, a supermarket, printed Leanne's picture and details on milk cartons sold at its stores nationwide. Printed flyers and billboards appeared across the town, with a picture of Leanne in her uniform with the words, "Have you seen me?" The police received several tips and possible sightings of her in towns as far away as Doncaster and Blackpool. But all tips and reported sightings led them no closer to her discovery. Leanne's parents continued to appear on the news as they made desperate, tearful pleas to the public, begging for any assistance that could help them find Leanne. It was a very dismal Christmas in the homes of everyone that knew and loved her. Her father put presents under the Christmas tree for his missing daughter. A Westlife CD Michelle had bought for Leanne remained unopened. Months went by in the search.
There were times when we were feeling pretty much down that she may have been taken and killed, but we really couldn't let ourselves or allow ourselves to believe that. Every day when you don't know, you wake up and wonder, is she going to be coming home today?
In the end, more than 2,000 houses, sheds, and outbuildings were searched in Leanne's neighborhood and along the route they believed she took on her way home from the shopping trip.
We had to calculate what we would have expected the route to be that she walked, and we call that the red route. The houses along that red route were searched, some 1,200 houses.
Police collected DNA samples from over 140 men in the area and executed search warrants at various locations throughout the city of Leeds. Yet they were no closer to learning the young girl's whereabouts. Her family and friends remained hopeful for her safe return. But on August 20th, 2001, 9 months after Leanne had vanished, a terrible find in the woods ended all chances of bringing the teenager home alive.
A telephone call from the police to say that they found a body in North Yorkshire.
On August 20th, 2001, as Leanne's classmates headed back to school to pick up their GCSE results, Mark Bisson was out walking his 2 dogs in Linley Woods, a thickly wooded area just inside the North Yorkshire county border, where he stumbled across what looked like a trash pile. It turned out to be a floral duvet. He loosened the twine that held the duvet together and found what looked like the silhouette of a body wrapped in garbage bags.
I saw a sock and I realised then that we actually found a body.
Police arrived and fully removed the duvet and 9 heavy-duty green garbage bags to reveal a fully clothed body.
I got the call in the afternoon, and I was told that a girl's body had been found at Lindley Woods. My immediate thoughts were, is this Leanne?
Its hands had been held to the back with 3 yellow cable ties. The leather dog collar secured tightly around the neck was loosened, and investigators pulled away the black garbage bag over its head to find the decomposing face of a young woman.
At the time when they first found out, they couldn't really tell us exactly how she died, but they said that it looked like strangulation.
This was not the first time a body had been found in that location. Back in 1992, the body of Yvonne Fitt had been found in the same area. Her killer had never been caught. The detectives hoped this case would not end out the same way. Using fingerprints, they were able to identify the body as that of the missing teenager, Leanne Tierney. An autopsy would reveal that she'd been strangled to death with a plastic cable tie. The missing person search had just escalated to murder. Authorities were confident that the murderer was a local. For one, Leanne's body was found about 16 miles from where she was last seen. Also, the yellow cable ties that were used to bind her hands had come from the British postal system and were used by the Royal Mail or Parcel Force. Finally, the green garbage bags that Leanne had been wrapped in came from Morrison's, a well-known grocery store chain, 2 of which were in the area. DNA samples were collected from family members, friends, and known offenders from the area, as they hoped that they might find a match. They also conducted a fingertip search in the dense woodland area where Leanne's body had been buried, and expanded this to cover an area of over 20,000 square meters. On September 28th, the day after what should have been Leanne's 17th birthday, she was buried. Sanford Methodist Church in Bramley, Leeds, the church where Leanne had been baptized as a newborn, was filled with hundreds of mourners. Many of them spilled out into the streets. To celebrate her life and upbeat spirit, they all wore vibrant colors. Leanne's mother, sister, and best friend were joined by other friends to carry the white coffin into the modest church. A floral tribute bearing the words, "Night, Night, Baby," was taken into the service to the song "November Rain" by the American rock band Guns N' Roses. The congregation sang all the teenagers' favorite hymns, including "Give Me Oil in My Lamp" and "Ye Shall Go Out with Joy."
Sort of imagine her, how she used to look when she was curled up in bed. But she would always tell them they always had to go in and rub her back when she went to bed to warm her up.
No, Lulu. Lulu, no barking.
One would keep her a little bit closer to her. She was lovely.
Hard right now,
And a little
but
baby.
I'm working on things.
In the crowd was Detective Superintendent Chris Gregg. He'd led the search for Leanne and had hoped to reunite her with her family. As he watched her coffin taken to the nearby Hilltop Cemetery where she would be laid to rest, his resolve to find who had killed her and bring them to justice grew stronger than ever. Investigators were still stumped about where Leanne's body had been found. It was an area that had been searched rigorously. Her body also didn't show the signs of a 9-month decomposition. Her hair was still pulled in the same ponytail with the same hair tie and hair clips as when she'd gone missing. After
Now
conducting
she's going to
testing
throw
samples
around her
of
dishes till she
the
gets
medical
fed.
examiner concluded that she
Lulu,
could
that's
prove
not
that she was
nice.
kidnapped. and her body had been kept in cold storage for months.
Yeah, 15 minutes. In 15 minutes.
To dispose of her body by leaving her in a clean dump, shrouded in the duvet. The killer likely hoped that her body would be taken to the dump. He was not. The best part was that he hid the body so well that a ton of forensic data and DNA had been obtained.
15 more minutes for dinner time, and she can't wait.
It was stashed when results came back that no DNA had been found on her body. They decided to investigate the items that were found on Leanne. Investigators found dog hair on Leanne's clothes. They figured they could get a DNA profile developed for the pet and identify a killer. The hairs were sent to a university in Texas that had developed a DNA profiling technique for pedigreed pets. The university was only able to develop a partial profile for a dog's DNA. This was the first time a dog's DNA profile was obtained in a British case. But with no dog to run it against, the result was shelved. The knitted scarf bound around Leanne's neck was promising. It contained strands of human hair in the knot. These were submitted for DNA testing, and they managed to create a DNA profile from the minute amounts of DNA inside the hair shaft. Next, investigators turned to the dog collar that had been used to wrap the black bin liner around her neck. It was made by a Nottingham company called Armitage Leather Products. Investigators considered that if the killer had bought the collar from them, they could get his name and address. They contacted the company, which told them that it sold to 220 different wholesalers across Britain and submitted their sales documents to the police. Investigators began the daunting task of contacting each of them, asking if they had reported any sales to the Leeds area of West Yorkshire. They hit pay dirt at the 112th call. The company was called Pet Pajamas. They were a Liverpool-based mail-order company and had sold 3 of the Armitage leather dog collars in Leeds. The details of the 3 customers were sent to investigators, and they began to look into their backgrounds. One of them quickly came up as a suspect. His name was John Taylor, and he lived in Bramley, just a few minutes from where Leanne had last been seen.
I saw that from Bramley area in Leeds, some 3/4 of a mile away from where Leanne disappeared, was the name John Taylor.
This was not the first time his name had come up in the investigation. When Leanne's body had been discovered, witnesses had mentioned him as someone that was often in the woods with his dog. By the time they were to interview him, he had said that his dog had died long before Leanne's murder. Had Taylor killed the pet to destroy evidence? Who was John Taylor?
Can you tell me how often you visited Flegill?
I've not been down there for years.
Okay.
It's not somewhere I used to go 7 months of the dog.
On the inside, Taylor seemed like a normal guy. He was a 45-year-old man who worked as a parcel delivery driver for Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail.
Get out of that bag.
Was for stealing a suit when he was 15. He'd been married, and the union produced 2 kids, a son born in 1981 and a daughter born in 1983. The 2 divorced in 1996. Taylor lived what looked like a quiet life alone in a terraced home in Cockshot Drive, Bramley, Leeds. Except for the fact that he enjoyed torturing the animals he hunted. His neighbors thought he was an ordinary bloke. Taylor would catch and torture the rabbits. He'd been seen spotting a fox repeatedly. While out poaching, he had enjoyed clubbing pheasants to death. In 1982, shortly after they moved to their new home on Cockshot Drive, Taylor began to buy and breed dogs and ferrets. Janet had always been proud of their home, but the smell of animal dung began to take its toll on the marriage. She tolerated it till, one day, he brought 2 large owls into the home. They lived on a steady diet of day-old chicks that he bought in the thousands and kept stored in one of the large freezers he had on the property. Janet filed for divorce. Taylor traveled all over the country a lot, but not for work. He'd place advertisements for female companions and would often travel across the country to have. He was also an avid user of Lonely Hearts advertisements. Through his phone records, investigators began to track down a number of these women for interviews. Most of them described him as harmless, but some admitted that they'd called the police to report him as a suspect after Leanne's body was found and details of her murder came out. 2, in particular, painted the picture of a man who enjoyed violence when they were intimate. He'd even told one woman he'd like to have intimate relations with her daughter. Another former girlfriend eventually broke up with Taylor because of his bondage fetish. Taylor would bind her hands with cable ties and put scarves over her face. When investigators asked her to describe how Taylor tied her, she said he kept a bundle of cable ties in a drawer next to his bed. He'd put a plastic cable tie around each of her wrists, then secure both their hands behind her back by using a third cable tie to link them. It was uncannily similar to how Leanne was discovered, and the information had also never been released to the public. 10 months after Leanne disappeared, Taylor was arrested and taken in for questioning. A warrant was served for his DNA and a search of his property. Police immediately sealed off his house in Cockshot Drive, putting up 7-foot-high wooden screens, and began a thorough search of the property. In the backyard, they found a hedge plant, a plum tree, and a poplar tree. Pollen consistent with these plants had been found on Leanne's hair, skin, and along her nasal tract. She had been there before she was killed. When they dug up the garden, they unearthed carcasses of various animals. 28 ferrets in a mass grave, and the skeletons of 4 dogs. One, a tan and black terrier, had a crushed skull. Could Taylor have killed his dog to hide his identity when he learned the police were looking for a man with a dog? The hairs from the terrier were tested and came back as a match to the hairs that were found on Leanne's body. In the house, the carpet had been stripped away. But on closer inspection, investigators found some pink carpet fibers caught on nails in the floorboards. These fibers turned out to be an exact match to the ones found on Leanne's body. They also found Leanne's blood under the floorboards of the house. The twine that had been used to tie the green bin liners around Leanne's body was traced to a manufacturer in Devon. They told investigators that they produced a small one-off batch that was used to make nets for catching rabbits. The batch found in Taylor's home was an exact match to the twine used on Leanne's body. They also found a large number of yellow zip ties in his house. Unlike the regular zip ties, the yellow ones are produced by an Italian company for the Royal Mail. Taylor, who worked for Parcel Force, a division of Royal Mail, could easily get his hands on them. The police also found the same type of garbage bag wrapped around a nail in John's kitchen. There were also 3 huge freezers on the property. At first, Taylor denied knowing Leanne or doing anything to her. When investigators confronted him with all the evidence they gathered, he admitted that he had abducted Leanne, but claimed her death was an accident. According to Taylor, after he got her into the house, there had been a struggle and Leanne had fallen, hitting her head in the process. She died instantly, but there was no evidence of a fall. Taylor also couldn't explain why Leanne had been strangled or her hands bound with the cable ties. Investigators were finally able to get a clear picture of what had happened to Leanne that night. Leanne was in the wrong place at the wrong time. When she walked alone along the unlit path of Howley Gill, Taylor grabbed her from behind. Whilst there were no eyewitnesses, it was later reported that someone had heard a stifled scream. Taylor put his hand over her mouth, blindfolded her with a scarf, wrapped a coat around her, and marched her to his house 22 minutes away. There he tied her hands behind her back and sat her in an old church pew in his kitchen. He strangled her with a zip tie and a woolen scarf. Then he kept her body in a freezer in his kitchen for months. Shortly before Leanne's body was found, his friends reported that an upright freezer in his kitchen had suddenly disappeared. Investigators speculated that it had broken down, and Taylor decided to get rid of Leanne's body, a fateful decision that led to his arrest. On February 15, 2002, 46-year-old John Taylor was found guilty of murder and kidnapping Leanne. He was sentenced to 2 life terms. He'll serve 20 years before being considered for parole. Investigators had always considered that Leanne's murder was not Taylor's first crime. The way he hid and disposed of the body was too calculated. They were right. Once police had Taylor's DNA profile on the database, 2 assault cases that had been in the system were linked to him. The first assault occurred on October 18, 1988, when Taylor, armed with a mask and knife, attacked a 32-year-old woman as she walked across Howley Gill to pick up her kids from school. The second took place on March 1, 1989. Taylor, wearing a mask and carrying a knife, burst into the Bramley house of a 21-year-old mother. He dragged her into her bedroom and he attacked her as her 18-month-old daughter cried in the next room. Taylor received 2 extra terms. In the following years, police did a cold case review of crimes across the country that were similar to Leanne's. In 2018, the extent of Taylor's depraved offending came to light when he admitted to another series of vile acts on 5 women between 1977 and 1996. In another incident, he held a knife to the throat of a pregnant woman in 1977. Just before Christmas, he assaulted a barmaid. Taylor pleaded guilty to these attacks and received a whole life sentence. John Taylor will not see the outside of his prison walls for the rest of his life. He's serving a sentence at the maximum security Wakefield prison, also known as Monster Mansion. It's home to many infamous felons who have committed horrific crimes.
It's not very nice sitting there knowing that somebody's actually done this to your child.